What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Internal Leverage Podcast, where we explore the mindset, habits, and routines of high performers. My guest on today's episode is a friend. Luke Kohen is a artist, storyteller, mentor, and ecopreneur with over a decade of experience empowering individuals, groups, and movements. As a mentor, he has served as a self-mastery guide for tons of entrepreneurs and change agents. As a artist and a storyteller and influencer, he's helping shape a new cultural narrative and crossing genres from hip hop, spoken word, neo soul, future, and future folk. Luke, welcome to the show.
Yeah, so good to be here with you, bro. Hey, everybody.
It's been quite a journey we've been on. I mean, you and I first met in New York over a decade ago. And I think we met at like an open mic, just rocking mics, freestyling. And we've been in many different circles since then.
For sure. We've had iterations through New York with Shri and that whole open mic scene at Juvamukti he was doing, and what we were doing with Unitribe. And then we reconnected on the West Coast. Yeah. And then, a bunch of years passed by. Here we are.
Yeah, here we are. And you're calling in from Bali, one of the paradises on earth. Beautiful, amazing location. A lot of people are relocating to Bali just because it's gorgeous, and there's just a whole amazing vibe that's going on over there. Is that right?
Yeah, I feel super, super blessed to have landed here and anchored here since basically since the Rona hit. Like I knew I would be out here, and then that kind of sealed the deal. I was like, okay, like I can't even really leave. And so life just sort of put me here. And then, I've been coming here, and there's such an epic, international community of entrepreneurs, and it's definitely one of the top digital nomad places on the earth. And what was cool about the whole COVID time is that like the people that really care about this island, they got to show up in a new way without all the tourism, and really build deeper relationships with the Balinese. And because, there's the shadow side of digital nomadicism in terms of the impact on places like this. And I try to be mindful of that and live in right relations as best that I can when I'm in places like this.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's one thing that I absolutely love about you. Obviously, there's tons of a crossover and overlap in our travels and our lives. But, and you and I have explored this in previous conversations, taking a look at that intersection between being a conscious person, right? Spiritual person, a person who stands for something more in life, and yet at the same time having this other side that is this in the world, in business, creating success, creating impact.
Sure.
Very often we find there's a bit of an imbalance, right? People are either super spiritual and living on the mountaintop in their underwear and doing all sorts of meditation. And then you have the people in business on Wall Street who are like, feeling soulless, but they're making money. But what I love about the work that you're doing is you're bridging that gap. So I'd love to jam on that for a little bit.
Yeah, let's go in. It's one of my favorite things to talk about because I love shattering some really limiting stories about either perspective on that, either spectrum for sure.
Why don't we start with, go ahead.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's definitely been a deep journey. It hasn't been like an overnight thing at all. I definitely come from the more spiritual mountaintop, sadhu, minimalist background for sure.
Right.
Monk life. Yeah.
Right. Right. Well, that's what I was going to ask you about. Can you, tell us a little bit about your journey in a nutshell, coming from a place of, being the sadhu or the holy person, and then finding a different relationship with money and business.
Yeah. So that has a whole arc, right? So to kind of summarize my journey and what brought me to where I am now, to give the full context, essentially, I had a full healing crisis when I was 22 years old. I was a very active martial artist and athlete, and I was highly competitive, and I was pushing my body really, really hard. Didn't know that I had a sensitive nervous system. Was definitely in what I call density denial. I didn't know my sensitivities and was just trying to cope with how things were as a man in the world, especially as a man in that kind of field of basketball and martial arts and a lot of street culture growing up from New York. So my body completely broke down. 22, I went from being agile 22-year-old to walking with a cane pretty much overnight. And so what I realized is I had a lot of grief kind of accumulated in my body from 9/11. I lost my brother-in-law, which is really where my spiritual journey started. So that loss, that sort of life-altering, sudden, jolt of crisis, how I coped with that, I didn't have the tools then. So that all that grief sort of accumulated in my body, plus my other habits of how I trained and how I pushed myself. So that there was this kind of contrast of substance abuse and also really high intense training. So my body just gave out, and there was some catalyst to how I injured myself, but that's essentially what happened is I burnt out. And so, obviously being 22 and used to being able to, like, I had my healthy outlet, like running and basketball and sparring and doing those things. Like I actually got like a natural high from that. So when that was taken away, I got really depressed because I actually didn't really like substance. Like I did it because that's what you do. And those addictive behaviors didn't actually bring fulfillment. And I was sort of, as an old soul, kind of aware of that on some level. There was enough awareness to be like, you probably shouldn't be, doing this, And so once that all happened, it was like, there was a reckoning. There was a really deep, okay, time to get real with what is. And so I actually had this awakening experience drinking tea. I had this cast iron teapot that I had bought myself that summer for my birthday with a gift certificate. I saw it and I was just like really attracted to it. Didn't know why. I was like, and all of a sudden I got into tea spontaneously, even leading up to this. I just got attracted to tea. And one day I was drinking tea and I dropped into what I call the living stillness of the universe. And there was this spontaneous meditation. I just went inward and time dissolved. And I could have been there 5 minutes. I could have been there an hour. It made no difference. And in that living stillness, I experienced a part of me come back. And I had this sort of memory of being a Taoist hermit. And I was in this cave. And there was this feeling of no discontinuity. And I came back and I was like, whoa, this is the feeling I've been looking for my entire life. I need to dedicate my life to this feeling. Wow. And I had tasted it through moments of basketball, peak experience on like mushrooms when I was a teenager, but there was something in that, just that window into timelessness that was like irrefutable. And so that sparked
what kind of tea was it?
It was just green. It was just regular ass green tea, like some like, nothing fancy, People always ask me that, like, what kind of tea was it? Non-psychedelic tea.
You got any more?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I'm coming back to the tea path really strong in this
saw
arc.
that on your Instagram. Yeah, which is huge.
17 years later, whatever it's been. So when that happened, the spark of desire to seek the truth of how things worked was just lit on me. And there's a Sanskrit word, mimoksha, which is the burning desire for enlightenment, like all-consuming fire to seek. And so I graduated college, I waited tables, and I went right to India. And I went right into yoga teacher training and got into Ayurveda. And that was the only thing that gave my body relief was yoga. Like I went to all these doctors and experts are like, oh, you're going to need a hip replacement when you're 30. We don't really know what's wrong with you. Sorry. Like all these experts. And I'm like, okay. But yoga just dropped me in. And so it started with yoga in India and like living in ashrams and learning Ayurveda and yoga, came back with all this stuff. And then eventually got more on like a medicine path and was introduced to ayahuasca and peyote and sweat lodge, and that opened up a whole thing. And so I just started to travel and immerse myself in these environments and learn from these really high level teachers. And this happened over like at least a decade of time gradually. And then with New York, it was like, okay, it's time to gather community around some of these types of things. And I started my sort of career as event producer, knowing that community was super healing. And that I wanted to create community that had like a spiritual foundation, but was open to all different paths, and people can kind of pick and choose their own menu, choose your own adventure. And so that was like my intro to entrepreneurship was event production, but I had no clue what I was doing. Like me and Sri were like just shooting from the hip with a lot of these things. And then it wasn't until I moved to California, I was in a band. I was living month to month as like a struggling healer. So like long story short, through that decade of time, my gifts turned on as a healer. Started to heal myself. Naturally, people came to me, and there was like this gift that came online. I started to really help people heal at a deep level, more like soul healing, not just trauma, but soul healing. But yeah, so I'm living in Ojai, California, and I don't know where rent's coming some months. Like I do these Reiki trainings and things like that, and odd jobs, and I was just tired of it. I was tired of going to the grocery store and being like, I don't want to contract in my body trying to buy superfoods and feel like I had scarcity. And I got fed up. And I remember the thing that really catalyzed it for me, and this is where like ecopreneur comes in with to the title, is when I was in Costa Rica, when I first found the medicine, and that stage of my journey after India and after these other stages, I ended up in an eco village, and I was blown away by seeing children raised in the jungle, raised in the setting of a village. And I was like, wow, I could have kids if it's like this. And I was shown in that time that this is part of why I'm here, is to help create places like that on the earth. And came back with like another big why, like this is why I do everything that I do to this day, is for that narrative and that culture and that time where we live like that. And so I had worked on basically a template for that over that decade. I lived in different places like that. I started to research governance models and like how communities work and why do they fail, why do they succeed. And in Ojai, I had a buddy who was like, yo, I met this investor. He's got $100 million business. He wants to put 10% into community. You should show him your template. I'm gonna set up a meeting. I'm like, bet. So I go, I meet with him, and he's looking through my thing. And he's like, this is really conscious entrepreneur. And I didn't know like about entrepreneurship like that, or creating a, this guy's a multi-million-dollar business, but he's woke. He's like super woke. And I'm like, huh. And he looks at me, he's like, this is really brilliant stuff, man, but humanity's not even ready for this. He's like, I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, humanity is going to need to pass through 4 more stages of initiation before they're even remotely ready for something like this. Come back to me after you make your first $100,000. I was just like, what? I'm like, how the fuck am I going to make $100,000? And so I go to my friend who dove into the coaching industry. He like told me maybe 4 weeks before, he's like, I just put all of my savings into this coach. Like it was like $30,000. I'm like, you're a maniac. Like, what are you talking about? And I checked in. I was like, how are you doing, bro? He's like, I'm crushing it. I'm like, all right, put me on. And he like, I gave him everything I had at the time. I think it was like 5K, like, stored away. It was like my like little savings that I had. And then I went through a massive initiation. My band broke up. I lost my best friend that I was building this whole brand with and movement, the music. And I was just devastated. But then 2 weeks later, I made $30,000 in sales. And it was like a whole other path opened up to me. And I was like, oh my God, I get it. I get the value that I bring. I understand the gift I have as a healer is where like I transform people's lives. Like why I have been undervaluing myself. And then I shifted into the whole high-end model, and I started to really work with some influential people, and just life started to reorganize around my orientation. And I was like, we don't even need investors. We can learn I want to teach my tribe how to make this kind of money, and we could pool our resources and get land together. And so that's how I got into coaching, was like wanting to actually help other creative, sensitive healer, wisdom keeper types learn how to play the game. And I went through these like paths of sort of, because I had such deep commitments with indigenous people and that sort of spirituality. And there's a lot of struggle and rubs there with capitalism, because capitalism and colonialism are pretty intimately connected if we really are honest about it. And so I'd go through these like existential crises and like how am I playing with this much money? And like I'm still like, and life was just getting me to come more and more refined. Remember what you're doing this for. Remember that this is for the future generation. Remember, like it just constantly getting checked up by the sacred fire, constantly getting checked up on my elders. And eventually I kind of went like wobbly between renouncing coaching and just going on tour with my music and being like, I don't want, and then almost running out of money and having to run my courses again and being like pendulating between this like artist healer archetype and then this really high level mystery school mentor sort of mystic business coach. And I didn't know how to reconcile these two parts of myself. And it took a lot of like deep sort of dark nights of the soul and initiations to refine how to be in a right relationship with those energies. The sort of the power that comes from sexual energy, like in Tantra, the power that comes from medicine. Like when I say medicine, the ability to heal or have a really strong soul presence, the power of money and how money is influence and energy, and then music. So these are the 4 paths that life sort of self-initiated me into, that I never cognitively chose, that life pulled me into, that I've had to learn how to build an integrated relationship with so that my shadow or my ego or those parts of the being don't use any of those things inappropriately or out of alignment. And so I feel really grateful for all, like, it was not fun getting to where I am now, but I feel really proud that I have a very healthy relationship with money, that I have a very healthy relationship with integrated sexuality, with my creative process and my health, and then also with healing, And so this is kind of what the beginning of my book's going to be going into. Some of these things, it's like this sort of what self-mastery actually is, and how do we deal with the subconscious, and how do we deal with these temptations, and how do we deal with big medicine, big power, big energies like money, sexuality, fame, those kinds of things that people can go on some trips with, man,
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of doors that's like a hallway with a choose your own adventure behind each and every door. That's amazing. I love that. And I also love that, you brought in the theme of being this high performer at a very young age, pushing yourself way too hard, and then experiencing the burnout, because that's another component to the themes that we explore in this podcast is,
totally.
successful people who are driven by a faulty foundation in their psychology and physiology, and then it comes to a crash, right? And so it's all about finding that internal leverage, which for you, obviously, it's the spirituality, it's the mission behind everything that you're doing. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, I'd say that there's a deep connection to my why, and like a much bigger service than my own self, for sure. And in the commitment to resolve, like really trying to heal some really deep challenges on the mental health side, on the physical side, like there was I don't even know how much of my process has actually been up to me, like how much like life was actually working in the background to bring me into some of these experiences, and like near-death experiences, really intense initiations, and like mystical stuff that I couldn't even begin to try to explain or even still understand what happened exactly in some of those ceremonies or some of the places that life brought me in the world. But yeah, it's definitely not just for me. That's for absolutely sure. And yet there's that individual component. And I think this is where the intersection of, like, I'm really like passionate about the intersection of the I to the we in our collective evolution on the planet right now. And I love that you're touching in on that, because like actually when you were speaking just now, I was like, oh yeah, I've had like 3 burnout experiences in my life, like 3, like, but at different stages of development, like very different orientations towards life. And even deep with the spiritual practices I had, I still kind of burnt out as a producer. Like doing festival production is no joke on the body. It's like it's own kind of Sundance on the energy, the amount of stress. It's like one of the top most stressful jobs in the world to do event production. And so I feel like I burnt out once as a, like the young age that I talked about. There was that burnout, and then there was a burnout from sort of festival production, and then there was a third burnout that was like me being a high performance coach and healer, an event producer, a musician, like basically doing the job of 10 different people, and that high performance syndrome that I call it. That's why I work with a lot of CEOs and people, because I get it. I get the demand of having like a lot of things to show up for. And I went to the extreme with it. Like there was a part of me that wanted to test how far I could push myself and how much I could succeed and how much I can get done. And so, yeah, I really have a lot of compassion for that burnout, and I've bounced back, and I've repaired my adrenals, and I've repaired my body, and I've done some really deep work getting underneath the psychological and like wounding, just the trauma that like motivates us to do certain things that are really at the end of the day compensation mechanisms for some deep pain. And that's real, and that's a real thing for all of us in different ways,
I think. And for a lot of people listening to this podcast, I like to say that there's 2 types of entrepreneurs that I tend to come across in my world. It's those that are on their way up and looking to embody more expansion and more power, and that's that rising. And then there's the exhalation, which is the people who have had a lot of success, at least outwardly, and who are looking for strategies to release and to let go and to
Yeah.
surrender
More
and to
need
trust.
to go a little more internal. Yeah.
Exactly. Because and if we don't do that, then we burn out. Like if we're trying to play all the positions and there's only so far we can scale. So for that second category of people, what can a busy executive, a CEO, an entrepreneur do short of flying to Bali and living in an amazing casa by the water? I mean, what's available to us?
Well, to me, like the main thing I would say is you got to get really clear on what you value, right? And you have to see the value in choosing to go internal. Like what's the actual value of prioritizing your emotional health? If the subconscious isn't motivated, or you don't see the reward of doing something, then you won't do it. And so that's the first thing I do with clients. Like, actually, let's get on the same page around like, what's the actual benefit? What's your why, or what's the motivation to prioritize this thing that hasn't previously been a priority? And to actually get excited enough, or to really understand the value of that on enough of an embodied level that there's motivation to actually make adjustments in life. Because a lot of times those adjustments are not easy. Those are like, some of them are life-changing adjustments that happen. And like you said, if we don't align with them, or we don't make those adjustments, life will self-initiate. It will bring us into a crisis. It will manifest the devastating things that put the personality through what it needs to go through, so that the soul comes more online, so that internal place is an inhabitable experience.
Right.
So I know it's not like the most practical answer, but that's what came through.
No, just real quick, as you were saying that, it reminds me of the quote by Vimalananda in the books, Agora books. If you ever read those books,
I remember. No, those were fun.
So he said,
classics.
He said, "Live with your reality, or your reality is going to come and live with you."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And being with what is, not how we want things to be, is one of the hardest things for anyone to do, especially high performance types that are so goal and future oriented. That it's very hard to actually learn how to receive what's here right now. Like, how can I drink in the what isness of of what's here? Because until we can do that, like it's tricky. I mean, I'm not an expert at it. Like, I'm still learning how to do that. I haven't resolved this completely. I'm still in process around being able to receive all the freaking beauty and amazingness that's around me. It's like, I'm still very goal driven and goal oriented human being, even with all the surrender experiments and experiences where I've been like literally laid out, near death experiences, like, everything that I wanted to happen taken away from me. I've had a lot of devastation in my life, but that, like, I understood over time that was happening for me. That was to put my personality and ego in its rightful place in service to my soul, and started to understand that, like, there's a little bit of like the longer count. Okay, there's a long game here. If we play speed chess, then we don't see the checkmate that's coming, down the line from life. So you got to kind of zoom out. It's kind of like feeling how nature moves a bit more than, it's almost like a permaculturist. When he goes to the land, he observes the land for a year before he builds anything. He's not just going to come in and project all these ideas onto the land of where the garden should be, or where they actually sit and observe and listen. And so I've actually had a year where I took a year off and I just detoxed my body, and I did nothing. I didn't see clients. I didn't try to be productive. And it was one of the most, like, for my high performance ego, it was a hell realm. It was like, I gotta do something. Like, I really want to do something productive. And it's like, nope. Life was like, you need to be still, boy. And it was like, that's when I was reconnecting with that original download that I had. Because I had done all these years of medicine work, and there's a lot of stimulation in that work. Like, ayahuasca is a stimulating plant, these visionary states and the event production. It's a lot of stimulation. And it was like, oh my God, stillness is there before the ceremony. Stillness is there after. What's all the stimulation in between for? Why don't I just go back to that stillness? And life is just like, yep, you remember that? Okay. I believe that we're all either consciously or unconsciously negotiating our relationship with stillness. And the more stillness we can allow the nervous system to experience, the more we can actually receive, and the more life can self-organize in our favor. and actually help us get the things that we want, even in ways that are more miraculous than our personality or ego could ever freaking contrive. I mean, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about how the quantum field works in these ways. And I know these things, and I witness these miracles, and I still have that impulsory, part of my ego that likes stimulation and wants to feel in control and be alive in the experience in that way. But it's like this other OSX. And I use that term like, hey, there's this other operating system that takes a little time to get used to and like functions very differently. It's not comfortable at first. It's
like
actually
Linux.
very foreign. Yeah. It's like going from Android to freaking Apple, I feel like, for some people, or whatever, whatever. It's just it's a totally different operating system than we're used to. And so the identity has to go through a whole dismantling and reconfiguration when that happens.
Well, I love what you said about drinking in, and it reminds me of the tea experience, because it sounds like when you were describing that tea experience, that's what it sounds like you're referencing or alluding to. This sort of timeless moment. Yeah.
I didn't catch that at all. I wasn't even like aware that you caught that.
Yeah. I drank it in.
Right on.
Man, I love that. Another place that my mind goes is, you're a multi-passionate, multi-talented human being. And that's also, I think, I guess, reflective of what we're talking about. You're also from New York City, so I know what that's like, right? The city doesn't sleep, and neither do New Yorkers, and we just go. And yet it's interesting, finding progress even in the multi-talentedness. Is being multi-talented, multi-passionate, is it a hindrance or is it a benefit?
I know that there's certain things that if I don't do it, my soul will shrivel up and die, like music. Is it harder to pursue a music career while sustaining a high-end online business? Absolutely. It requires more delegation. It requires even more mastery. And so I've set up a new bar to challenge myself in that sort of self-mastery path of like, okay, like if I were to commit to just any one of these paths, I feel like, for example, if I was doing just coaching, I would have been hit 7 figures years ago, but I was like, that wasn't the priority for me. It was that I would have enough money to reinvest in my music, to be able to help people for free in these contexts and work with Indigenous people in this way. Or just to, again, like coming back to your question around what would you say to a CEO, it's lifestyle. That's what I was going to go. I forgot. So I'll come back to it. What is your lifestyle? Like, what do you actually need? What do you actually want? Because some of the goals with some of these things are so unrealistic to what the actual needs or wants are that there's a disconnect. And so for me, being able to tend to my multifacetedness, I'm a Renaissance man. I'm a poet. I make music, I community build, all these things. I've learned as I've given myself permission to have these experiences, like taking a year off and coming into stillness and letting life show me what was next, and not trying to control anything and just sit and cook in the discomfort of listening. What emerged out of that listening was like, okay, there's going to be seasons. There's a season to recording. And then there's a season to working with this demographic over here. And then there's a season to this. And if I'm listening to that long game, if I'm like, okay, nature's really running the show here, I can pay attention to the patterns, like a good permaculturist, a good gardener, a good chess player, and make moves here, knowing that, okay, 3 months from now, when I release this, that's going to allow this next piece to roll out, and trust life enough to how to do that in a way that I'm responding to the information I'm getting as opposed to trying to dictate on top of life. And I think that's the real huge piece for a lot of people, that there's different stages to this. And some people aren't made that way. Some people are meant to just do one thing, and that's beautiful, and that's their gift, and their gift and their purpose are connected. And I also share that there's a difference between our purpose and our gift. I want to shout out my homie Sir Bay, who gave me that code or reminded me of that code, that there's a difference between your gift and your purpose. So your purpose is often realized through your gift, but it's different, right? So I know my sort of dharma is, what my purpose is, and I have multiple gifts to express that, right? And that gave me a lot of permission. It was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, even when I'm not doing this thing, I'm still showing up for this why, because it intersects in this way, right? And so, you know, when I've like met more of the spiritual types along the path that are just getting into entrepreneurship, or they feel a little lost, they're like, what the heck am I doing? Like, you know, what is this money game? Or like, how do I start doing it? And they have these passions and they have these gifts, but their purpose is still kind of like, it's like, what are you committed to? Focus there. Oh yeah, I'm actually committed to making a more sort of regenerative culture on the planet, or I'm committed to helping people in this way. And then all of a sudden, like, things start to fire, and it's like, okay, like, I can make steps based on what I'm committed to. So for me, it's the ability to sustain my commitments while remaining realistic with the real world step-by-step quality of some of those things. Because I'm a visionary. I've always been a visionary. I have massive visions for this planet, for the things that I've created. And as a manifesting generator, for those of you who are into human design, I can initiate and then also follow through. So I can take a vision and take action on it and then bring it into reality. And I know that process. But the way that I did it in the past was a lot of efforting. It was a lot of doing. It was like a warrior or a hunter. And then, but doing it in a different way where you're utilizing both the masculine and feminine without that receiving piece online. That efforting piece will try to control and ensure that it happens. Like, so I've had to get my masculine and feminine in a lot more balance, where it's like, okay, I'm going into a doing mode, and that feels true. Life is authentically moving through me right now to do this thing. And then there's the recovery or the breath between, where life is like, okay, now receive. And so I'm still, like I said, I'm still refining. I'm still in my process of refining my mastery of how to output, receive, exhale, inhale. Okay, you were in a flow state, and now you're trying to force another flow state. Now's your time to shut up and recover. Okay, you went 3 hours hard. You wrote a song. You did a session. You did this. Like, your high performance mind wants to do 2 more productive things, but actually you need to go take a nap. Can I listen enough to actually take in that information my life and body's giving me, to go and take a nap and then actually wake up more productive, and I get back into flow state, recovery, flow state, recovery, some resistance, some feelings to feel. Okay, need to like yell into a pillow or cry or laugh or jump up and down or pattern interrupt or do some qigong or whatever. Flow state, recovery, right? So that balance of flow state and recovery, to me, is how I can do a lot of these different things effectively without burning out or beating myself up too much when it doesn't go the way that I expect, knowing that I'm tending these fires in a good way because they're all supporting my purpose, all the different expressions.
I'm drinking that in. Yeah, no, that was dope. That was like a little masterclass right there on flow and the artistry of flow, which is really, when people are burning out, it's because we're not in flow.
They're pushing.
Yeah. We're pushing, we're forcing. And the analogy for me, because you referenced martial arts earlier, is Sensei, the founder of Aikido, this 90-year-old man on a mat, and dudes are like charging him, and he's just like one little tiny little move here, one little move there, and dudes are just flying, right?
Yeah, totally.
So it's all about leveraging those movements. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, Aikido is cool, man. I did Aikido. That was the first martial art I really studied when I was 8 to about 11. It's like, demanded my parents. I was like, I'm 8 years old. Send me to the Shaolin Temple. And they were like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I'm 8 years old. Come on. Like something in my soul turned on. And they put me in YMC karate, and I came back and it was like, what the heck is this? I want the real thing. And like, this will not do. And then my dad found like a legit Aikido dojo in the hood and put me in with this epic, like, black Aikido master dude in New Brighton. And then I was, I was this little kid in this Aikido dojo, and I was learning these principles, and it was a cool little stage in my life. I remember all of it. I really love that art. I think Aikido's got some of the deeper mysticism of some of of all the styles of martial arts out there. It's one of the more like self-realized styles, like the level of mastery of the person that created it, and understanding surrender and understanding there's like a benevolence in it, because you're not it's not requiring effort. You're not forcing, you're not the striking and all of that. It's literally responding to life. You know, you're responding. So yeah, I love Aikido. I love that you just mentioned that.
Yeah.
That's spot on to me. Yeah.
So how can we wrap this up and put a bow in it? Let's go resonant to say here.
I mean, I like where the conversation went today. I love that we're talking about flow states and recovery and how to take care of ourselves, a little bit of the journey. I mean, do you have another prompt or something, you know?
I think the question is, what's the most important takeaway for business professionals who are listening to this, who are in their office or in their home office or wherever they are, and feeling the entrapment, feeling the pressure and the forcefulness, and looking for alternative modalities, alternative ways of showing up and being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what comes to me right now is, if you're not being good to yourself, what's the point? What's the point of all of it if you're not being good to yourself? What, you know, you arrive in this ideal projection of where you need to be in the future a year from now, and where you're going to beat yourself up all the way to get there. No, be good to you. So my desire, or what I really try to drill home for my friends and colleagues, clients, is how do we become our own best friends? Like, really, like, to have a relationship with your own innocence, where it's like, if your body is like trying to tell you to get up out of that seat and go do something different, listen. You're going to be more productive, I promise. Let go of your preconcepts of what productivity is, and let life reveal to you what's actually productive. Because if you're not enjoying yourself, what the fuck is the point? What's the point? What is the lifestyle that you want to live? Maybe you make one less figure, but you're in nature that much more. You know, like, I see these guys out here surfing every day. You know, some of these people out here where I live, and they are so happy to surf and do yoga, and they're not broke either. You know, like, they're good. So, like, I think there's something to really knowing what gets us in our zone. It's just a matter if we listen to it or not. If we actually take action to listen to that intelligence, that wisdom of our own body, of the wisdom of life. And sometimes people just need a lot of contrast to jolt them out of their patterns. You know, like, a lot of these patterns, these high performance patterns, these addictions to productivity, and the projected result of where that's going to lead us to, and how we're going to treat ourselves then, not now. It's really seductive, and it goes deep into the subconscious. And so I just really want people that are hearing this to know that there are parts of themselves there that they're going to meet, that are important, that have value, and those places of innocence and those places of their humanity are equally as valuable as some of the projected places where we see ourselves in the future.
Right. So always take an opportunity to stop, pause, smell the flowers, and drink some tea.
Drink some tea. Find that stillness, because when you feel that stillness, you can charge up, and there's so much more you can actually get done from that place. Like, I'm not saying you don't need to go off to a cave and meditate, but like, hey, maybe turn off your phone for a weekend. Maybe go take that hike, or maybe go drop in with your beloved and take moments of presence that's not going to take away from the projected outcome. Like,
well, I think
those things are worth it.
I mean, you know, just to add to that, I think it's also challenging for a lot of people, you know, whose minds are just racing. Even to just sit in meditation, what people would think, like, for instance, when I'm in high performance mode and I sit in meditation, quote unquote meditation, for 60 minutes, 59 of those minutes, I'm checking email.
in your mind.
in my mind.
Yeah.
I got to respond to this person. Right. It's only 1 minute that I'm actually experiencing a bit of a peace and a letting go
Yeah.
ness. Right. And so,
Totally.
so yeah, I think that's, it's like, it's easier said than done, which I think needs to be recognized.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's a beautiful point. So this is why I love the wisdom of bioenergetics. This is the main modality that I study with my mentors. And this is something that Osho was huge on. He observed Westerners at the ashram losing their freaking minds through meditation because they had all this emotional energy underneath the mental body. So the mental body is actually very often trying to mitigate and problem solve the emotional experience that's happening underneath. Now, most of us are raised in a culture that's emotionally void, emotionally intelligent. Emotional intelligence was just never supported. So a lot of people don't know what they're actually feeling or emotionally experiencing deep down in the subconscious, and they're used to the mental body being where they orient their consciousness. And so Osho devised all these ways to move big emotional energy, trauma, charged things. And once the emotions moved, boom, then there could be an experience of stillness because the charge isn't there. And so I think for a lot of those types of people that you're talking about, that like where the mind just go, it usually requires something physical to move the energy. That's why a lot, like running, like it doesn't need to be overtly spiritual. You don't need to be doing yoga or qigong, whatever. I encourage people to just find what works for you, man. Like sitting stillness meditation might be whack. Like you might need moving meditation. That's why like qigong is great for a lot of people because it moves breath, sound, and movement all together. Visualization, imagination. It's very engaging. So the mind gets like a productive way to be engaged, but also allows the energy to start to come into stillness and harmony and alignment and experience that long, effortless breath happening without controlling, like these different little nuances. So I think for people out there that have a really hard time meditating is just start to explore other ways of moving energy. Start to find other ways that help you unplug or turn off the mind with, and maybe not even like that being the goal, like let the mind just be the mind. It's going to be busy, but there's a still point that's a sensation that you can find within that. And then you start to learn how to focus more of your attention and energy and sense of place in that space. And that's where we move from the mental body more and more into the heart, then more and more into the dantian or the core of the body, where the soul can exist at the seat of this sort of metaphysical organic machine called the body.
Beautiful. I love it. We can jam all day long, but let's wrap this puppy up. So
let's wrap it up.
Where can people find you and learn more about your work and what projects you're up to?
Yeah, Luke Kohen with a K, LukeKohen. So .com on Instagram. All my handles are there, Luke Kohen. And yeah, I share a lot of inspiring content on Instagram, videos, music, poems, transmissions. I like to go in on everything that matters. So yeah, appreciate you having me on, Abe. It's good to go in today, man. Thanks for we had a little technical difficulties before. You were like hella you were like monk-like patience. You're like, it is okay, my brother.
I'm glad we did it though. This was dope.